welcome everyone. Again, I'm so glad that each and every one of you is here across time and place. I'm going to take a moment to just arrive again. Breathe deep, breathe in, breathe out. Connect with your body. I'm really excited to share these particular stories with you this morning because it's a moment in which I get to share one of the more powerful spiritual experiences I've had. A story of what I call a baptism. And it's also an opportunity to reflect on a model of Jesus' ministry for us. And there was a funny moment this morning for me, is when a friend asked me, they wanted to know whether I liked hugs. And they said, "Are you huggable?" And I heard, "Are you humble?" And I chuckled inside because it's a kind of awkward, socially awkward question to ask out of the blue. But it's actually exactly the right question for someone who is feeling a sense of call to be offering this on the stage, that I can only do this faithfully if I am centering the divine rather than my own desire for control or power or recognition. And the story we'll be looking today, which is John's baptism of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, and what happens as a result, is also a story in which Jesus not only starts his ministry, but experiences tests. The very same kind of tests that I think we all experience when we feel called, and it's easy to use the power for other purposes than we're called to, and make it about ourselves. So are we humble? Are we centering God in what we do? I'm going to use a less known translation of the Gospel of Mark by Sarah Rudin. It's a relatively new translation. And what I like about it, is it better if I'm over here? Okay. What I like about it is that she uses new words for some theological words that might have baggage. She also uses transliterations of all the names. And I'm going to not do that. So I'm altering the translation a little slightly. I'm going to use the regular names we know, or many of us know, to make it a little easier. So it's not exactly how she translates it. Mark 1, 4 through 15. John the Baptist appeared in the wasteland, announcing baptism to change people's purpose and absolve them from their offenses. And they traveled out to him, inhabitants of the whole countryside of Judea, and all the people of Jerusalem. And they were baptized by him in the river Jordan, acknowledging their offenses. Now, John was dressed in unshorn camel hide, and he had an animal skin belt covering his groin, and he ate locusts and wild honey. And he announced this message: "The one who's more powerful than me is coming after me. I'm not fit to crouch down and untie a thong on his sandals. I've baptized you with water, but he'll baptize you with the holy life breath." And it happened in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized in the Jordan by John. And right when he came up from the water, he saw the skies split apart, and the life breath coming down like a dove to alight on him. And a voice came out of the skies: "You are my beloved Son. In you I've taken delight." And right away, the life breath drove him out into the wasteland. And he was in the wasteland 40 days, being tested by Satan. And he was in the company of wild animals, and God's messengers attended to him. But after John was handed over, Jesus went into Galilee, announcing God's good news, saying, "The time is ripe, and God's kingdom has come close. Change your purpose and trust in the good news." A lot happens in this passage. I really connect to the fact that John was in the wasteland. And he was not dressing very normatively for most folks. He was really trusting in what the land could provide. A lot of speculation is out there about exactly who John the Baptist was and how much he knew Jesus and how much Jesus knew him and all that sort of thing, and we don't really know. But it is clear that rituals of immersion in water for cleansing were a part of the culture. Spiritual cleansing in water. And it is clear that John the Baptist was doing that in the River Jordan. And it is clear that he was doing it in a new way. For one thing, he was inviting everyone to come do it. And he was preaching that something really profound would happen. People would acknowledge their offenses, and they would have a new purpose. And he was also preaching that this wasn't the whole deal. He was doing it with water, and there was someone who was going to do it with the Holy Spirit, which Sarah Rudin translates as the life breath. Because the word spirit, like respiration, is a Latin word, but the Greek has to do with breath and wind and that thing that gives us life. The life breath. So he's talking about the fact that a new person is going to come along who is going to make baptism something that we experience with a direct connection to the divine. It's also really powerful in the story to me that Jesus comes to get baptized, and then he gets named. His belovedness and his relationship to God gets named. And then, as soon as he gets named, the way his public ministry begins, because this is the start of his public ministry, as told in the Gospel of Mark, is that he goes into the wasteland for 40 days, and he has stuff to figure out. He's not ready right away. He only starts announcing the good news, to trust in it and to change, after he's had time to wrestle and be sure that he can really do it in a humble way, in a way that's centered in God and not about him. So I want to share a personal story, which is that after a good number of years of being a part of Portland Friends Meeting, I was in worship, and I was not expecting much to happen. In fact, my conclusion was, and I don't know if I just had been having a dry period or what, was, well, I'm just sitting here. But I made a choice, and I'm not saying that this is by my effort. I believe that everything is a gift that we experience. But I made a choice to hold up a particular issue in the light, to lift up a situation in which my self-centeredness and my ego was causing me to not really see another person in my life and their needs. And I remember that the light really started to show me and let me feel in my body the depth of what that actually meant to be so concerned about my ego sometimes in this relationship. Not easy. And part of that experience, and I'm not exactly sure the timing, but I settled into this vision of me outside the world and the earth spinning, and a sense of being a part of it much larger than myself. And I was sitting with what my ego actually meant in terms of my relationship to others, and I decided to ask for forgiveness. And what was amazing is that as soon as I asked, I felt God forgiving me. And it wasn't a forgiveness that said, this is okay, don't worry about it, it was all right, it wasn't bad. No, it was a forgiveness that forgive me because I am loved and forgiven, and I had asked for it. And it was a forgiveness that had also already been there. But now I was feeling it. And I was filled with one of the most intense experiences of gratitude that I've ever had. Because for the first time, I felt a firm sense that that love was there for me regardless of what the light showed me. So I'm imagining these people from Jerusalem and all of Judea going to the river, and they're doing just that. They're acknowledging what they've done, and they are doing a cleansing ritual, and the call is to change their purpose. And so what happens? What's the connection between experiencing forgiveness and acknowledging our whole selves and all our complexity? What's the connection between that and changing our purpose? What I felt is that it is much easier to trust in the reality of whatever gets revealed to us, and much easier to follow if we are willing to offer our whole selves up and recognize that we are forgiven. That acknowledgement process is part of the opening that we do to make our purpose be about God. I want to share another story which happened earlier in time. And it was a moment where I referenced this yesterday. For a long time, I really felt that kind of regardless of what people's relationship was with me, regardless of how much appreciation they said or acted, on some level, they were going to find out a secret reality about me and abandon me. All my friends and all the people who were part of a young adults Wednesday worship group were going to suddenly disappear one day if I really revealed who I was. This makes it really scary to encounter the light. This makes it really scary to hear others' ministry that might challenge me to reveal more about myself. Because what if it shows that thing? I don't know what it is, but it's there. What if I find out that thing and they find out that thing and I have no community anymore? And I hadn't felt God's love directly yet. But there was an experience of worship in which I got to a broken open place, and at the end of worship I asked, Do I belong? Do you really want me here? And the community hit pause on everything else that was happening and took the time to hold that question in worship and say to me, Genna, you really belong. We really love you. We really need you here. The reason I'm sharing both stories, the direct experience and the indirect experience of God's love through other people, is that I think we need both. We can have a relationship to our own soil and our own seeds, but we also often need help. We have to go to each other's gardens. And in this society where so much feels so scary about belonging, and in which we can feel so fearful about whether we're really wanted, we need each other to help. I believe that Jesus' model of ministry reflects this. He gets named as the beloved Son of God. And that is also the experience we can have. And the Holy Spirit descends upon him, this direct connection to God as part of that. And so what happens next? We have this challenge to find a way to so care for one another and so provide as best we can the security of God's love and the embrace of God's love, and to feel it and invite each other into it, that we can safely open ourselves to whatever we need to know about ourselves. But then, what do we do with what we find out? I believe just like what John the Baptist was doing, we need to have part of it be forgiveness and extending tender love to ourselves. And I believe part of it is about deciding to make ourselves change, or to let God change us, rather, to how we're meant to be and unfold. And that's the new purpose part. Jesus says, the time is ripe and God's kingdom has come close. Change your purpose and trust in the good news. And I am slowly, step by step, thanks to the help of baptism, changing my purpose to be about God and something bigger. And the hardest part for me right now is trusting in the good news. That's where my journey's at. Because the good news is big. It's much larger than recycling. It's much larger than the things that help us feel good about ourselves or our egos. Small things do matter, but the good news starts with that inner healing from an estrangement to who we really are. And in that inner healing, and in that growth of connection, the good news is that we allow ourselves to be worked upon and changed. And in that working upon us, and in that change, we find our called to altered relationships. And the altered relationships with the earth, with each other, with people around the world, asks a lot of us in this time and place of empire and destruction and climate change. And I don't have the answers. The good news is that an utter dependence on God means we can be whole selves. The good news is that we can simply follow. The good news is that in that there's freedom to truly love and be about something that is much larger than just our smaller selves. And the good news is that in caring about each other, we can heal from some of the fear and some of the fear of loss of belonging and housing and food that holds us back. Trust in the good news. Trust that by following, things will work out. Trust that you are held, whatever you find out. John the Baptist appeared in the wasteland announcing baptism to change people's purpose and absolve them from their offenses. And they traveled out to him, inhabitants of the whole countryside of Judea, and all the people of Jerusalem, and they were baptized by him in the river Jordan, acknowledging their offenses. Now, John was dressed in unshorn camel hide, and he had an animal skin belt covering his groin. And he ate locusts and wild honey. And he announced this message: the one who's more powerful than me is coming after me, and I'm not fit to crouch down and untie a thong on his sandals. I've baptized you with water, but he'll baptize you with the holy life breath. And it happened in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized in the Jordan by John. And right when he came up from the water, he saw the skies split apart and the life breath coming down like a dove to alight on him. And a voice came out of the skies, "You are my beloved Son. In you I've taken delight." And right away, the life breath drove him out into the wasteland. And he was in the wasteland 40 days, being tested by Satan, and he was in the company of wild animals, and God's messengers attended to him. But after John was handed over, Jesus went into Galilee announcing God's good news and saying, "The time is ripe, and God's kingdom has come close. Change your purpose and trust in the good news."